We aren't underperforming because we lack skill. We are underperforming because we are performing. This is part of the Performance Meet series. Every episode in this series covers one way the performer, the pressure to perform is actively getting in the way of the performing self. This is episode 21. I want to start with something you have almost suddenly experienced, but probably attributed to the wrong cause. Think about something you do well when nobody is watching. A skill you have built over time, something that feels natural, almost authentic. Now think about the last time you did the same thing, with someone important watching. Something changed. The thing that felt automatic suddenly requires conscious effort. The movement that was fluid becomes mechanical. The words that came easily suddenly need to be located, and the more you try to do it well, the worse it got. You probably call it this nerves, or lack of confidence, or pressure getting to you. It is none of those things. It is a specific neurological mechanism with a specific name, and understanding it changes everything about how you approach any high-stake performance. Let me start with research. In the early 1900s, researcher named Norman Triplett noticed something about cyclists. They rode specifically faster when racing others than when racing alone against the clock. The presence of other people improved their performance. He called this social facilitation, and for decades it was treated as a foundational principle. The presence of others makes you better. The accept it doesn't. Not always. What the subsequent decades of research show it is more complicated and more useful. The presence of others improves performance on tasks that are well done. Things you have done hundreds of times. Things that have been automated through repetition. The same presence degrades performance on tasks that are complex. Tasks you are still learning. Tasks that requires conscious attention and flexible thinking. The mechanism is specific. Being observed increases arousal. Arousal causes the brain to rely more heavily on the dominant response. Response that isn't most practiced, most automatic. For a well-learned skill, the dominant response is the correct one. The skill executed and it executes well. For a skill being developed, the dominant response is the simpler version, the less sophisticated version, the one that existed before the training. Pressure doesn't reveal your best, it reveals what is most automated. And what is most automated isn't always your best. But there is a second mechanism that is even more relevant to most people's experience, and is the one that explains what happens to experts under pressure. It's called self-monitoring. The moment you start watching yourself, evaluating your own performance as it happens, performance degrades, not because the skill is gone, because conscious attention is an interfering with an automated process. The examples are specific and recognizable. The golfer who has made this putt thousands of times in a practice missed a simple one on the final hole. Not because the skill disappeared, because in that moment they were thinking about how they were putting, watching the wrist, monitoring the grip, consciously managing a process that executes better without conscious management. The surgeon whose hands have performed this procedure hundreds of times without hesitation suddenly feels certain because a senior colleague walked into operation room. The skill didn't leave, the self-monitoring arrived, and the self-monitoring is incompatible with that fluid execution the skill requires. The speaker who knows the material perfectly, who has researched at every point, loses the thread completely because they started listening to themselves speak, started evaluating whether the words were good enough, started performing rather than communicating, and performance is the enemy of communication. Is what is actually happening when we choke, not weakness, not lack of preparation, conscious interference with a process that was already capable. The self-help industry has a word for this. It calls it confidence. It tells you to build confidence, to visualize success, to speak more positively to yourself, to believe in yourself more deeply. And none of that is working. But none of it is the point, because the problem isn't confidence. The skill is already there. The problem is conscious interference with an automated process. And you can't build your way out of that by believing in yourself more. You build your way out of it by understanding what the conscious mind is doing and getting it to stop doing it, which is what is actually helps. The first thing is to move focus from the outcome to the process. Not, I'm doing this well, but what is the next specific action? Process focus occupies the conscious mind with something useful rather than leaving it free to monitor and evaluate and interfere. The surgeon doesn't think about whether the procedure is doing well. They think about the next specific step, then the next one, and then the next one. The conscious mind is occupied. The automated skill executes. The second thing is to practice under pressure deliberately. Not get comfortable with nerves, but make the performance itself more deeply automated. The more automated the skill, the less damage conscious interference can do, which means the solution to choking under pressure isn't less pressure, it is more repetition, until the skill is so deeply embedded that conscious attention can't reach it. The third thing is the most counterintuitive. Accept the arousal rather than fighting it. Research on this is specific. Interpreting anxiety as excitement measurably improves performance, not because the feeling changes, because the relationship to the feeling changes. The physiology of anxiety and excitement is almost identical. elevated heart rate, heightened alertness, increased readiness to act. The difference is the level, and the level determines whether the arousal becomes resource or interference. Tell yourself you are excited rather than anxious. Isn't self-deception. It is accurate redirection of an ambiguous signal. The best performance happens when the conscious mind gets out of the way of the trained body. That isn't confidence, it is trust. Trust in what has already been built. And the work isn't to build more confidence. The work is to learn how to step back from the process long enough for the process to do what it can do. If you know someone who is about to do something important, presentation, an interview, a performance, an exam, a conversation that matters, and they are telling themselves they just need more confidence, send them this. Not as an advice, as the specific thing that nobody told them, that would actually change something. And in next episode, loneliness. What it actually is, and why having more people around us doesn't fix it.